The heavens have granted you an eternal lifespan, yet they were stingy enough to strip away your ability to defend yourself, bestowing upon you only the chance to add a single attribute point once every year. You understand the system's intent quite clearly. As long as you live long enough, you are destined to become invincible in this world. To survive and secure a foothold in these turbulent, war-torn times, you do not hesitate to invest all your points into strength. With just this single point added to your strength, it allowed a newcomer like you to possess the divine power to tear a corpse apart with your bare hands. In the second year, you increased your strength as usual, unexpectedly causing your body to undergo a metamorphosis into a diamond-like physique, impenetrable by blades or spears. Relying on this constitution, you successfully secured a position as a town patrol officer during these chaotic times. However, the good days did not last long. In your first year of service, the Great Qing dynasty declared war on the Man tribe and nationwide conscription began. You originally assumed it would be difficult to escape the fate of being sent to the front lines to kill the enemy, yet the authorities took into consideration that you were solitary, possessing not even a wife, and fearing that someone without ties would either flee or rebel. You were luckily spared from being sent to the front lines, which functioned as a meat grinder. However, your patrol squad leader, Xiao Yan, did not share that stroke of luck. Before he departed, he entrusted his 9-year-old daughter, Xiao Shuier, to your care. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, the 4th year arrived. Possessing 4 points of strength, you had become an invincible existence among mere mortals. Just as a band of horse bandits attacked the town, you single-handedly slaughtered over 50 of them, successfully striking terror into the hearts of every citizen in the town. Thanks to this glorious feat, you were promoted to captain of the patrol squad, and the town mayor favored you even more, stating outright that once he retires, this position of town mayor would belong to no one but you. But there was also bad news. Among the horse bandits you killed was a man named Gao Qisheng, and his older brother Gao Qiang had obtained a celestial destiny over the last 2 years and become a disciple of an immortal sect. This meant that he would very likely return to exact his revenge. Fortunately, the opponent had only just begun his cultivation journey. It would likely take another year or two before he could descend the mountain. You nodded, though your heart remained completely unperturbed. You were confident that as long as you persisted in adding points for another 30 years, it remained to be seen who would be teaching whom a lesson. Years passed until the 11th year. You had accumulated 10 points of strength, and at this point a casual punch from you could split mountains and shatter rocks. Thus, you decided to pause increasing your strength and shifted to adding a point into luck. The results were instantaneous. You began picking up money while walking down the street, and your luck surged to the point where fish would bite your hook even without bait. 2 more years passed, and news from the front line reported that Xiao Yan had fallen in battle. When the news reached Qingnu town, Xiao Shuier wept for a long time. At the same time, a major event occurred in the town. Several individuals claiming to be immortals from the Yanyu sect suddenly descended upon Qingnu town, prepared to recruit disciples. According to them, they sensed that someone possessing great luck existed within the town, and whoever held such great luck would have a boundless future. One possessed of such profound destiny was none other than the founder of the Dianyu sect, Nonggong Huan. Initially, you believed your own innate talent had finally been discovered, yet after the assessment, it was revealed that the true bearer of this great fortune was none other than Xiao Shuier, whom you had nurtured all these years. Xiao Shuier did not refuse the invitation to become a disciple of the immortal, but during these dozen years of living together, she had long realized that your youthful appearance was not that of a mere mortal. In hopes of remaining by your side through the passing of time, she not only agreed to become the saintess of the Dianyu sect, but also pleaded with the sect to allow you to accompany her. The Dianjui sect had no initial objections to this arrangement. However, upon testing your aptitude, they discovered that you were a rare individual entirely devoid of fortune. To be devoid of fortune means that one possesses the potential to bring calamity and misfortune to the destiny of those around them. The sect promptly issued a prohibition against your recruitment, and you were rejected with cold, unwavering resolve. Nevertheless, to sever the karmic ties, the members of the Danyu sect agreed to offer you compensation in the form of cultivation manuals, elixirs, and dharma treasures of your choosing. You pondered for a moment before asking if there existed a cultivation technique capable of enhancing one's cultivation realm through the consumption of one's own lifespan. The immortal was taken aback by your request, yet still tossed you a manual titled Breath Regulation Technique, along with 2 essence-nourishing pills. This breath regulation technique allows one to accelerate cultivation to the Golden Core realm by burning one's lifespan, though its efficacy is strictly limited to the Golden Core stage. However, this method carries a unique property. For every additional year lived, the practitioner's physical vessel grows significantly stronger. You accepted the manual and opened it to examine its contents. Clearly written upon the page was a single provocative line. 300 years to achieve a golden core, 3,000 years to become a great power, 30,000 years to ascend as a saint, and 300,000 years to become invincible under the heavens. You let out a laugh at the absurdity. The text even dared to promise invincibility, yet your heart surged with joy, feeling that this technique was truly tailored for you. Furthermore, the manual noted that one could triple their cultivation speed by consuming their lifespan at 3 times the standard rate. What once required 300 years to form a core could now be achieved in a mere century. 10 years later, the elderly village chief retired, and you naturally succeeded him as the new leader of Qingyu Town. Despite the decades that had passed, your appearance remained entirely unchanged. The villagers concluded that you had obtained an immortal affinity and were perhaps already half an immortal yourself. An increasing number of people flocked to Qingyu Town, begging to become your disciples, but you refused them all, claiming that the breath regulation technique was not meant for mortals to cultivate. By this time, your cultivation had reached the 8th layer of the qi refining stage. Your power had accumulated to 20 points and your fortune had risen to 6. In your current state, even a mere leaf plucked and flicked by your hand could pierce through a mountain range 100 meters tall. Under the influence of your surging destiny, you appeared capable of undergoing a second enlightenment. You transformed the technique you had learned into the Great Breath Regulation Technique, extending its limits to the nascent soul realm. As your reputation spread far and wide, more martial artists arrived seeking apprenticeship. Among them were those whose clans had been annihilated seeking vengeance, those humiliated by broken engagements, and those cast aside by their families, all fueled by a desire for retribution. In short, each was more tragic than the last, yet you continued to turn them all away. However, they mistook your rejections for a lack of sincerity, eventually settling in Qingyu Town to wait, hoping that their dedication might one day move you. Seeing that their presence stimulated the town's economic growth, you merely shook your head and ceased driving them away. Until one day, when word of your reputation spread far and wide, certain individuals who had never seen you take action began to harbor suspicions. They orchestrated for 2 rival factions to stir up trouble in your territory, purely to test your strength. Forced into a corner, you had no choice but to step forward and mediate, demanding they provide compensation for the damaged shops. Under normal circumstances, paying the reparations would have ended the matter. But while they agreed with their lips, they were secretly determined to challenge your superiority. You furrowed your brows and declared that this was no place for the pugilistic world's bloodshed. However, they showed you no respect whatsoever, screaming and demanding a confrontation on the spot. Realizing that someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, you spoke coldly to the crowd. Whether this was orchestrated by Wang Wu of the Tianken sect, whose techniques are erratic, or Li Si of the Kongshu sect, who lacks a true heart for cultivation, pay the compensation and vanish from this town. If not, you must bear the consequences yourself. The ringleader attempted to argue further, but you offered a cold laugh, picked up your teacup, and with a fingertip dipped in tea, you flicked a single drop. With nothing more than that droplet of water, the man was sent flying over 100 meters away. Seeing this, the others fled in terror, leaving only one person standing in place. That individual did not retreat. Instead, he stepped forward, cupped his hands, and said, "I am Shen Lian of the Great Qian Inspectorate, and I wish to invite you to emerge from seclusion to save the Great Qian Empire." You were utterly perplexed. You were not the only cultivator in the Great Qian Empire, so why were they so insistent on seeking you out? The man replied candidly, "There is indeed another immortal, but he has been in secluded meditation for so long that he has long ceased to concern himself with worldly affairs. Currently, you are the only one we can rely upon." You were stunned upon hearing this, recalling the moment you first transmigrated, when you witnessed an immortal descend from the heavens with a single strike, annihilating an entire city, a sight that compelled you to develop your strength in complete humility. How could there be no other cultivators left? Seeing your profound ignorance regarding the world of cultivation, the man explained that this realm is merely the lower world. True immortals reside in the upper realm, and those who descend to the mortal plane face immense suppression, often requiring them to restart their cultivation from the very beginning, which is why it is exceptionally rare for any immortal to choose to descend. Clarity washed over you, followed by a secret sense of joy. It appeared there were no truly formidable figures left in this world. You realized that if you continued to endure for a few more tens of thousands of years, you could emerge from your seclusion as an invincible existence. As for the matter of saving the Great Qian Empire, you had little interest. After all, war is filled with too many variables. It is far better to continue living in quiet, steady cultivation. And so the very next moment, you vanished instantly from before his eyes. A few days later, a strange event occurred in the town. A desiccated corpse suddenly appeared before the doors of the magistrate's office. Do you recall that it was Taoist priest Tianhe of the Maoshan sect who handled the matter all those years ago? You immediately asked the villagers for the whereabouts of Taoist priest Tianhe. The villagers replied that he was already on his way, but because you lacked the heavenly eye to discern the cause of death yourself, you had no choice but to wait. Yet, after waiting for several hours, there was still no sign of him. It was not until a messenger arrived with word that Taoist priest Tianhe was dead, found as nothing more than a dried-up husk. The villagers discovered a scroll upon the body of the Taoist. Upon taking it and unfurling the parchment, you discovered it was a detailed record of his investigation spanning the last 20 years. It turned out that everything was linked to a serpent demon hiding within the mountain behind Qingyu Town. This serpent demon moved through the heart of the mountain at will, occasionally feeding upon the blood and vitality of humans to nourish itself. It was during a reconnaissance mission that Taoist priest Tianhe met his demise. Seeing this, you fell into a contemplative silence and quietly took your leave. That very night, you ventured deep into the mountain behind the town. Following the records left by Taoist priest Tianhe, you located a massive mountain shaped like the body of a serpent. Without hesitation, you channeled 25 points of strength and unleashed a single punch. With a thunderous roar, the entire mountain collapsed. Amidst the scattering debris, a gargantuan serpent dozens of meters long lunged out. Seeing you, the great serpent shrieked in fury. I was only 100 souls away from transcending into a dragon. It is all because of you that my plans have failed at the final hour. Faced with the creature's defiant roar, you did not utter a single word, instead launching yet another strike. Before such absolute power, the great serpent was obliterated, its flesh and blood spraying into the air. To your surprise, bolstered by your immense fortune, you managed to harvest a wisp of dragon essence from the serpent's remains. With this wisp of dragon energy, you gained the ability to strike down enemies from afar. Furthermore, this feat of shattering a mountain with a single blow led you to estimate that you now possess the strength of an 8th-layer foundation establishment cultivator. The following day, the townsfolk observed the sudden collapse of the mountain and suspected you were the cause. Because your name was Wang Lin, they bestowed upon you the title of Wang the Semi-Immortal. They called you semi-immortal because you had yet to cross paths with other immortals, leaving your true standing uncertain. From that moment on, Qingniu Town was flooded with martial artists who came to revere you. The town was even renamed Little Wulin, though such trivialities no longer concerned you. For by then, you had already entered seclusion to cultivate, choosing to distance yourself from the affairs of the world. During your time in seclusion, the world outside shifted like clouds in a storm, and Little Wulin became a holy land for the martial world. The 4 great sects established their foundations there, the old emperor of the Great Qian passed away, and a new sovereign ascended the throne. The imperial court grew unstable, and the borders were breached by the Man tribes. The primary defensive line fell, forcing a retreat to secondary positions. In that same year, an immortal emerged, traveling directly toward Little Wulin. This man was none other than Gao Qiqiang, who had entered the immortal sect 30 years ago. News of the immortal's arrival spread rapidly across 100 miles, and the 4 great sects soon received urgent reports. Gao Qiqiang had cultivated for 30 years. Why had he come straight to Shaolin immediately upon leaving the mountain? Though the reason remained unclear, it was certainly no trivial matter. The sect masters of the 4 great sects held an emergency meeting, agreeing that their words must be cautious and their attitude respectful. After all, having cultivated the immortal arts, the man was no longer the same as he once was. Someone suggested notifying the former sect leader who was currently in secluded meditation, but out of fear of disturbing his rest, the proposal was ultimately rejected. The 4 great sects decided to wait Gao Qiqiang's arrival, treating him with the utmost courtesy in hopes of reaching a peaceful resolution. On the 4th day, Gao Qiqiang arrived at the Red Wharf of Shaowulin and without a single word, severed the entire pier with a single strike of his blade. The force caused muddy waves to surge amidst the river currents, as he coldly declared, "Bring out those who have authority among you." Hearing this, the 4 sect masters hurried forward, cupping their hands in salutation. "We welcome the immortal's esteemed arrival. Please forgive us for not greeting you from afar." Gao Qiqiang let out a cold laugh and stepped onto the shore. "Is this not Qingyu Town? Why has it been renamed to Shaowulin?" One sect master smiled and explained, "Senior, you may not be aware, but Qingyu Town is the old name. It has since been renamed Shaowulin." Qiqiang spoke in a flat tone. 35 years ago, I entered the immortal sect to cultivate, and that same year, my younger brother also entered the sect. I truly believed that my brother and I had a bright future ahead of us. Yet, on the eve of my departure from the sect, I learned that my brother was already dead. He died in Qingyu Town. As he spoke, his tone turned ruthless, and the Qinggong sword in his hand trembled slightly, emitting a ferocious buzzing hum. Looking at the terrified crowd, he declared with chilling resolve, "Do not say I did not give you a chance. As long as you find the culprit who murdered my brother, we shall remain at peace. Otherwise, I will force the entirety of Qingyu Town to be buried alongside him." Once these words were spoken, the entire assembly fell into an uproar, and the 4 sect masters stared with solemn, panic-stricken eyes. One sect master reluctantly cupped his hands and said, "Senior, this is a matter from 35 years ago. Our sects have only been established in Shaowulin for 10 years. How could we possibly find the perpetrator from so long ago?" The other sect leaders clamored, echoing his sentiments in unison. Gao Qiqiang narrowed his eyes, sweeping his gaze across the crowd before lifting his sword to point at the leading sect master, his tone turning icy cold. "This is not a matter for me to ponder based on the omens shown by the divination. This individual has remained within Qingyu Town for 35 years, never once stepping beyond its borders. You have brought these people who have never left before me. I have my own methods to discern the truth." "Never left?" The sect masters whispered amongst themselves. If they have truly remained for 35 years, they must have been born and raised in Qingyu Town. "We shall immediately dispatch men to investigate and provide you with an answer shortly." Gao Qiqiang swept his gaze over them and nonchalantly held up 3 fingers, gesturing to the time. "I grant you 3 incense sticks of time. If you return without news, I will slaughter the lot of you." Having spoken, he drew his sword and swung. A mountain not far away was cleaved cleanly in 2. Seeing this, the 4 sect masters broke into a cold sweat, nodding frantically before waving their hands to command their subordinates to use every resource at their disposal for the search. In an instant, all of Qingniu Town was thrown into chaos as martial artists and wanderers scurried to gather intelligence. At this moment, Gao Qiqiang suddenly inquired about the current state of the martial world and who held true authority. Furthermore, who were the supreme experts of this era? The four sect masters answered in unison. The current leader is the martial alliance master Zuo Lengchan, yet the head of the 10 great experts is Yue Bukun of the Huashan sect. This man possesses profound internal energy, having once crossed the sea by walking 300 meters through the air. He truly carries the bearing of an immortal. Hearing this, Gao Qiang sneered. Are mere frogs at the bottom of a well worthy of being called immortals? It is nothing more than walking across the sea. They then proceeded to introduce each of the 10 great experts one by one. Gao Qiang listened, curling his lip in an expression of utter disdain. An elder hesitated for a moment before speaking. In truth, beyond the 10 great experts, there are 2 immortals whose power is so immense that they are not ranked among them. Gao Qiang raised an eyebrow. Who dares to assume the title of immortal? The sect master explained. The first, as you surely know, is your own master, the foremost immortal of great Chen, Taoist Qing Gao Qiang nodded. My master naturally has transcended the mortal coil. His then turned frigid. Then tell me who exactly dares to stand alongside my master? The 4 sect masters explained. There is much you do not know. This immortal appeared 35 years ago. It is said his strength can move mountains, and a single drop of water from his hand can claim a life. He was once the mayor of Qingnu Town. Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes. If he can truly move mountains, he is indeed an immortal. Have you witnessed these feats with your own eyes? The 4 sect masters shook their heads hurriedly. We have not. These are rumors from a decade ago. We have only heard these tales, yet so many attest to it, that it surely cannot be false. Seemingly recalling something, he revealed a hesitant expression and spoke. If one were to claim that for the past 35 years someone has never left Qingyu Town, then I fear there is truly only one person who fits that description, and that person is this immortal. However, Gao Qiang's expression turned icy and the cold glint of his steel sword flared brilliantly. However, what? The 4 sect masters hurriedly explained that the immortal was currently in seclusion. Gao Qiang sneered and said, and what if he is in seclusion? I am a true immortal while his status is uncertain. Even if he were to emerge from the mountain, so what? As an immortal myself, am I not permitted to leave the mountain? The 4 sect masters dared not defy him and could only nod in submission. Thus, the elders of the various sects within the town were ordered by their masters to lead a crowd toward the house where you were in seclusion, but upon arriving at the doorstep, everyone hesitated. For over a decade, no one had dared to enter this residence, nor did they even dare to approach the courtyard, fearing they might provoke the immortal. Just as everyone was wavering, an elder stepped forward to reassure himself, saying, what is there to fear? It is likely all just rumors, perhaps there is no one inside at all. Though he spoke such words, his actions were exceedingly cautious as he gently knocked on the door. Immortal, are you there? This humble one has a matter to request. Who goes there? Your lazy voice drifted from within the house, sounding as if you had just woken from slumber. The elder was struck with terror and hurriedly fell to his knees. Junior has unintentionally offended you, but I have an urgent matter to request. The martial artist behind him, seeing this, dared not delay and followed the elder, kneeling in perfect order. 300 people from the 3 great sects knelt in a dense, dark mass before the courtyard. What is the matter? Without anyone noticing when it happened, you were already standing before that elder. The elder was paralyzed with fear. Not daring to look up, he bowed low and trembling spoke. An immortal from an immortal sect has descended upon us, saying he wishes to meet you and is currently waiting at the Red Pier. If you do not go, he threatens to slaughter everyone in our town. Hearing this, you showed a look of bitterness and said, he is quite impatient, isn't he? You nodded, glanced briefly at the crowd, kneeling in the cold, and asked, how many years have passed since I entered seclusion? The elder hurriedly replied, reporting to the immortal, 10 years have passed since you entered seclusion. You let out a sigh, glancing toward the towering structures packed tightly together around you, and shaking your head with a sigh of disappointment, you said, I suggest you abandon this sect altogether. You would be far better suited as a construction crew. The elder wore a look of utter confusion. What does construction crew mean? Seeing his bewildered expression, you offered no further explanation, shifting your focus to ask, what is the name of the person looking for me? That immortal calls himself Gao Qiang. The elder answered. You frowned slightly as the name seemed to strike a chord. Why has he come? It is said he seeks vengeance for his younger brother. 35 years ago, his brother was killed in Qingyu Town. As the elder spoke, your memory suddenly sharpened. You asked, was his brother's name Gao Qiang? That is correct. The elder nodded hastily. Then his brother was indeed killed by my hand, you admitted directly. As these words left your lips, the 300 people present were stunned, never expecting that this Grand Master was truly the one who had committed the deed. You let out a hearty laugh, so he came looking for me on purpose. When guests arrive from afar, one must always offer hospitality, lead the way. With that, the procession of 300 people surrounded you in a grand display as you headed toward the Red Pier. The 4 sect leaders frowned upon seeing this formation. Believing they had failed to invite the immortal and preparing to fight Gao Qiang to the death, a sense of tragic resolve rose within them. However, Gao Qiang sneered at the sight and said, why all this posturing? Do you intend to throw your lives away fighting me? Before his words had even faded, the 300 knights parted ways. You picked at your ear, emerging from behind the crowd with an indifferent expression. You are Gao Qiang? You asked calmly. A cold glint flashed in Gao Qiang's eyes. You court death, daring to address an immortal by his given name. You did not reply, instead sinking your consciousness into your mind. You poured all the points accumulated over the past 10 years entirely into your strength. In an instant, your strength reached 35 points. Vast, surging divine power roiled violently within your body. You faced Gao Chi-chung and let out a cold laugh. You should have come 35 years ago. You should have come on the very day I killed your brother. The longer you linger, the more reason you have to leave. Only now did Cao Qixiang confirm that you were the one who killed his brother, yet his expression remained unperturbed. Instead, a sinister smile curled upon his lips. It is just as well that you killed that disgraceful piece of trash. Now, I have a legitimate reason to slaughter every last one of you. Finishing his words, Cao Qixiang let out a roar, his sword chi spiraling violently as he struck directly at you. The martial artists gathered around watched in terror, scrambling to get out of the way. Yet, faced with an onslaught that had caused everyone else to pale, you merely waved your hand, and his sword ki dissipated into nothingness. The onlookers were instantly stunned, paralyzed by a shock that rendered them speechless. With a faint smile, you asked, "If you lack even the strength to strike, what right do you have to draw your sword against me?" Cao Qiqiang was rattled, and in the next moment, his killing intent surged to an unprecedented peak. He was, after all, the most gifted prodigy his sect had seen in 3 centuries. He was supposed to be the undisputed second-in-command under his master, a man to whom all the mortals of this world were expected to bow their heads. But as this thought crossed his mind, you extended a single finger. In an instant, a burst of dragon-like energy erupted from your fingertip, surging directly towards Cao Qiqiang. Cao Qiqiang attempted to block with his sword, but the irresistible, heaven-shaking power of that energy tore him apart in a heartbeat, leaving behind only a mist of blood and bone. The crowd stood frozen in awe. To cleave rivers with a finger, to level mountains, to slay an immortal, it all required but a single movement. This was the true power of an immortal. Ignoring their terror, you let out a yawn and waved your hand dismissively, saying, "If there is nothing else, I shall take my leave." Seeing this, the 4 sect leaders bowed respectfully, hurriedly saying, "Please, immortal, if there is anything you require, simply command us. We shall spare no effort to fulfill your wishes." You nodded and retreated back into the small grass-covered shack. The 4 sect leaders waited outside, not daring to step an inch closer, and asked cautiously, "Might we assist in renovating your humble abode?" You replied calmly, "There is no need. I am fond of Qingyu Town. Only in this dilapidated house do I feel as though I am living in the town as it was 35 years ago. If time is a river that cannot be stemmed, then you are the stone resting at the bottom of the current, unmoved by the shifting tides, waiting as the waters flow by, only to look back and realize that some things from the past are worth preserving." Before long, the news of the immortal in Qingyu Town descending from his seclusion to kill spread across the land. Within half a month, almost everyone in the great Qin realm was whispering of the event. Most terrifying of all was that this immortal had not merely killed a mortal with a flick of his finger, but an immortal himself. This perfectly illustrated the vast, insurmountable chasm that existed between immortals. 3 days later, a massive army descended upon Qingyu Town, blockading the entire area while the martial artists could only watch from afar. And even the 4... Do you see that? Those are the uniforms of the Zhenbu Division. I recognize the elite masters of the Zhenbu Division within their ranks, accompanied by the Imperial Guard. That personage must have arrived. The martial artists of the Jianghu whispered amongst themselves, for everyone knew who had come, the Grand Princess of the Daqian Empire. Inside the dilapidated shack, a woman draped in black imperial robes with golden embroidery stood before you, pleading in a low, solemn voice. "I represent the Daqian Empire in inviting you to emerge from seclusion to salvage the desperate state of our nation. I am willing to appoint you as the imperial preceptor and fulfill any request you may have." You looked at the woman with indifference, your tone calm. "There is one thing that must be made clear first. Though I am a man of good intentions, you truly cannot offer any reward that would entice me, can you?" The woman nodded in agreement with your words, then continued, "But you have resided within the territory of Daqian for many years. Surely there is some shred of sentimentality between us. Furthermore, the barbarians are brutal. Once they breach the passes, they will undoubtedly slaughter the common people. Your emergence is not merely to save Daqian, but to save the lives of the innocent." You scoffed upon hearing this and replied, "Your words hold logic, yet I do not succumb to sentimental appeals. Your attempt at moral coercion is useless against me." The woman fell silent for a moment, hesitating to speak, before finally letting out a sigh. "My apologies for the intrusion. It is good that you know." After speaking, you retreated back to your rotting rocking chair, preparing to lounge once more. Your luck-based influence resonates with the Imperial Court. Dragon Chi increased by 1%. This is actually possible? Seeing this, you immediately rose from the rocking chair and called out to the woman who was about to depart. "You may return first. I shall arrive in 3 days' time." The woman turned back with joy, thanking you with great excitement. "Thank you, Imperial Preceptor. It is truly fortunate that you have agreed to intervene. Daqian does not know how to repay you. I shall immediately inform the Emperor to appoint you as the Imperial Preceptor to stabilize the national fortune. You have gained the favor of the Imperial Court." Dragon Chi increased by 5%. At this rate, once the Dragon Chi reaches 100%, you will be able to break through to the next stage. As you pondered, a new notification appeared in your mind. Identity as Grand Preceptor of Dacian acquired, possessing 20% of the national fortune, grants a 20% increase to your own cultivation base. You were slightly surprised. Why did you not receive such notifications when you were a Junbu official or a town magistrate? Upon further reflection, you realize that those previous positions were of too low a standing to warrant such a reward. This means that in the future, the higher the status you attain, the greater the benefits you will receive. After seeing the Grand Princess off, you tidied up your home, went to the edge of town to fish for a while, and then strolled slowly back to your dwelling. 3 days later, having settled all your affairs, you stepped forward lightly, covering 1,000 meters in the blink of an eye, and approached the border with astonishing speed. Within the border fortress, a soldier rushed to report to the general. 10,000 barbarian cavalry are charging directly toward the city walls. Upon hearing this, the Grand Princess wore a grave expression. She commanded the soldiers to prepare their bows and arrows, ordering them to hold the wall at all costs and strictly forbidding any sortie from the city. She further instructed the martial arts masters to remain vigilant in their defense, ensuring no barbarian experts could exploit any gaps in their formation. Understood. As the soldier hurried away, the Grand Princess rubbed the bridge of her nose, asking with a heavy heart, "Has the general accompanying the immortal not arrived yet?" The commander on her left hurriedly replied, "There has been no word from the rear garrison. It is likely the immortal has not yet arrived." The Grand Princess nodded helplessly. "One can only hope." A peerless martial artist has emerged among the barbarians. Last time he broke through 3,000 armored troops single-handedly, nearly turning the tide of the entire battle alone. While our dynasty possesses many skilled martial artists, even Yobukun once stated that if he and the old monk were to join forces, they would still be inferior to that barbarian martial artist, and if forced into a fight to the death, they would surely perish. Upon hearing this, the opposing commander asked solemnly, "Is that barbarian martial artist truly that formidable?" Before his words could fade, the heavy thundering of hooves erupted outside the city, the ground trembling as thousands of cavalry charged with full intent to slaughter. The garrison soldiers frantically drew their great bows. However, a figure surged forward ahead of the barbarian cavalry formation, leaping 10 meters in a single stride. It was the barbarian warrior, Taiwuya. "Fire," the commander urgently ordered. A rain of arrows obscured the heavens as they descended, yet Taiwuya merely waved his hand casually, shattering every metal arrow into fragments. He continued his relentless charge toward the top of the city wall. 1,000 meters was no distance at all. As he prepared to leap onto the ramparts, the defending soldiers fell into a panic, for while they could manage against common infantry, how could they possibly withstand a figure of such supernatural caliber? Immediately after, Taiwuya leaped onto the wall, slaughtering the defenders, while the barbarian battering ram smashed crazily against the city gate. With a deafening roar, the final line of defense collapsed. The savage faces of the barbarian cavalry appeared right before their eyes. Just as the soldiers of the Great Qian were convinced of their impending demise, a figure suddenly appeared between the two armies. The man waved his hand languidly and said, "Go back." The barbarian leader's eyes glinted with cruelty. "Are you a master of the Great Qian?" You shook your head. "I am no master of the Great Qian, but you may call me the Imperial Preceptor of the Great Qian." As those 4 words were spoken, the defenders upon the wall were instantly invigorated. Could it be that our Great Qian has appointed a national protector who is truly an immortal? The leading commander dropped to one knee. "We welcome the national protector." The rest of the soldiers followed, kneeling in unison. While the atmosphere atop the city wall was filled with jubilation, the barbarian chieftain spurred his warhorse forward 2 paces and arrogantly declared, "My grassland cavalry. Only 3,000 are needed to shatter any barricade, and wherever we strike, we emerge victorious. 30,000 are enough to sweep across the realm. Now I have 300,000 iron cavalry at my back, sufficient to raise the Great Qian to the ground. You are merely a martial artist. Upon what basis do you think you can stand against my 300,000 troops?" With that, he let out an angry roar. The cavalry at the city gate began their charge. The earth trembled, and the defending soldiers turned deathly pale. Though they saw an immortal standing before them, could even an immortal truly withstand 300,000 mounted warriors? Faced with the doubts of the multitude, your expression remained calm, and you even took the time to stretch in a leisurely manner. It was not until the cavalry had charged to within 30 meters that you smirked and suddenly stomped your foot against the ground. The strength of the flood dragon erupted with a thunderous roar. The ground shattered inch by inch, immediately collapsing and burying nearly 10,000 cavalrymen in the abyss. This sight left the soldiers on both sides utterly stunned and speechless. Is this truly the might of an immortal? You emerged slowly from the dust of the crumbling wall, shouting to the barbarian cavalry hundreds of meters away. 300,000 is insufficient. Perhaps 3,000,000 might be enough to exchange a few blows with me. The barbarian cavalry dared not respond. They stared in terror at you standing amidst the wreckage as if witnessing a god, and in an instant they turned and fled in a panic. Amidst the chaotic scene, the city commander shouted for the national protector in excitement, his cheers echoing up to the clouds. The eldest princess, standing not far away, gazed at you with eyes full of adoration. This is the power of an immortal. Perhaps this is the absolute limit of the mortal world. Your expression darkened as you glanced toward the left side of the city wall. Tai Wuya was locked in a fierce battle with Yu Bukun and the elderly monk. You casually kicked a small stone. With a sharp whistle, the stone tore through the air, instantly piercing Tai Wuya's left arm. Tai Wuya gritted his teeth against the pain, glaring at you with hatred. You casually flicked your sleeve. Do you believe yourself skilled in combat? Tai Wuya roared in fury. I am capable enough to fight. Once these words left your lips, Tai Wuya fell silent, glaring at you with seething resentment. Jabukun and the old monk seized the opportunity to retreat, bowing respectfully toward the Grand Preceptor. You gave a slight nod, yet the two felt no sense of slight. They knew all too well that the gap between them and an immortal was as vast as the heavens and the earth. That Tai Wuya was injured so effortlessly with a mere flick of your sleeve was the clearest proof of this. Refusing to yield, Tai Wuya slammed a fist into the ground, leaving behind a deep crater. You merely benefited from being born earlier, he spat. You simply stumbled upon fortuitous encounters when the aura of heaven and earth was abundant. In terms of innate talent, I far surpass you. Grant me 30 years to reach the next era, and I shall surely climb to the summit and slaughter you both. The same tiresome, familiar arrogance, you muttered to yourself. The phantom hovering over the ruins stirred slightly. Before Tai Wuya could react, he was snatched by a giant hand and hurled away, collapsing to the ground as he vomited blood. You stepped forward slowly, casually picking up a sword dropped by a soldier along the way. Just as you prepared to finish Tai Wuya, a thunderous roar echoed from the distance. I beseech the upper sect to descend. Before you could steady yourself, you saw Tai Wuya, who had been on the brink of death, suddenly ignite with a golden radiance in his eyes, and to your surprise, he levitated into the air. Invoking a deity is a technique of the Taoist schools, passed down through folklore. Yet the scene before you was clearly something else entirely. You stood firmly upon the only patch of intact ground within a 100-meter radius. Looking up at Tai Wuya in the sky, you furrowed your brow and asked, "Who are you?" Tai Wuya did not answer, merely remarking with disdain, "This mortal vessel is too fragile. It can only manifest a fraction of my true power." At this moment, a Chi cultivator flew in on his weapon and stood respectfully behind, cupping his hands to salute the upper sex immortal. "Was it you who summoned me?" The Chi cultivator nodded frantically. Pleading, I implore the immortal to execute this person, to clear the path for the upper sect's eventual descent to this realm. Tai Wuya did not even glance at him, instead pointing a finger toward the cultivator. Light condensed in his palm as he spoke coldly. This territory is under the jurisdiction of the Yanyue immortal sect. Furthermore, the assessment indicates there isn't even a golden core cultivator present. Why must I descend personally to deal with such trash? Do you realize that I was in the midst of discoursing with a holy maiden, only to be forced down to this lower realm because of you? The Chi refiner was so terrified that his entire body trembled uncontrollably. This lowly one was unaware that he was disturbing an immortal. My crimes are unforgivable. I truly deserve death. Tai Wuya replied coldly, clenching his fist. The Chi refiner's body was instantly crushed into a pulp of blood and gore, ending his life on the spot. Tai Wuya then turned his gaze toward you, a blinding golden light erupting from his eyes, filled with frigid killing intent. You also deserve to die. If it were not for a lowly ant like you causing trouble, why would I have been forced to descend? I shall harvest all of your souls and refine them into primal cultivation essence to compensate for the cost of my descent into this lower realm. As these words were spoken, all the soldiers were struck with terror. He intended to harvest the souls of everyone present. Go to your death. Tai Wuya sneered. I will crush you just as easily as I dispatched that Chi refiner. You braced yourself where you stood and suddenly unleashed a punch to your right. As your fist struck the empty air, it emitted a sound like clashing metal, and the space at that point shattered like fragments of glass. The surrounding soldiers and the barbarian cavalry were left completely stunned. They had never witnessed such a divine ability. You slowly retracted your fist and spoke calmly to Tai Wuya, who hung in the air. Do not bother bringing out such childish parlor tricks. It is tedious. Tai Wuya's expression darkened. You are merely a slightly larger ant. In the end, you cannot escape the fate of being crushed. Perhaps there exists a possibility, within your pupils. The chi of a flood dragon churned and spread throughout your body. In this world, all living things are but ants, you declared, including you who have descended from above. A haughty smile curled at the corners of your lips. You struck your chest with your fist and said with overwhelming dominance, "And I am the greatest ant of them all." As your voice faded, a giant fist enveloped in evil flood dragon chi descended from the heavens with a thunderous roar. Tai Wuya, struck with panic, formed a hand seal and desperately manifested a golden protective barrier around himself. This was a defensive divine ability from the ancient era, capable of shielding him from mortal wounds. But the moment the punch landed, that so-called ancient defense shattered in an instant. Tai Wuya was driven deep into the earth by the impact. Buried 3,000 feet underground, the one known as the Immortal and Tai Wuya vanished from this world entirely. You rubbed your smoking fist with satisfaction and let out a disdainful chuckle. When I fight with conviction. When I bury someone, I am equally professional. Empowered by your destiny, you have severed a wisp of the soul of an immortal from the Tao-sealing realm of the upper heavens. You have received 3 strands of the will of the invincible. Your Tier 1 cultivation technique, the Xuanhun Dao Scroll, has surged forward in progress. With the slaying of each soul, one can receive a surge of invincible intent. Gather 3,000 such surges, and one may lay claim to the title of the Peerless. Thus opens the path to ascend to the heavens. You nod, grasping the general gist of the situation, though you remain unperturbed. After all, 3,000 surges is still a distant goal. As for the cultivation manual, there is no rush to refine it until a later time. You then look toward the tens of thousands of barbarian iron cavalry and wave your hand, dismissing them. Not daring to linger, the cavalry retreats in haste back to the grasslands. Suddenly, you call out to stop them. The Chi cultivators who arrived from abroad must stay. Are you concerned that these practitioners might report your existence to the upper realm? The group of cultivators freezes, their bodies stiffening before they collapse to the ground, kowtowing and begging the immortal for mercy. We swear to retreat to the islands beyond the seas. We shall never cause trouble again. You nod. I truly wish to spare you, but your past actions leave me unable to rest easy. The immortal is wise and clear-sighted. We shall never contact the upper realm. Furthermore, now that the immortal has descended, the formidable physical strength of that Tai Wuya is a rarity in this world. We beg the immortal to set his mind at ease. You fold your arms across your chest and speak in a detached tone. As you know, I am a kind person, and furthermore, I am lazy. Ordinarily, if it does not require me to exert myself, I shall not take action. Therefore, I shall use the swiftest method to send you on your way, so you need not suffer the pain of a massacre. It will only last 10 breaths. 56 overseas Chi cultivators lose their lives outside the border gates. You stand alone outside the city, the aura of the peerless clearly etched upon your face. With the immortal having shattered the barbarian iron cavalry, the great Qian dynasty not only secures its borders but recovers hundreds of miles of territory without the loss of a single soldier. The barbarian iron cavalry retreats to the grasslands, never daring to invade again. All of this is attributed to the national master of Great Qian. Those in the martial world drop the near from nearly peerless, declaring simply that you are peerless. Even the Emperor of Great Qian cannot match the prestige you now command. The effect of destiny. You have gained the adoration of the citizens of Great Qian, and your flood dragon aura has increased by 50%. You were resting within your carriage when the notification jolts you awake, revealing that you have gained the adoration of the citizens. You cannot help but nod to yourself. It seems you truly are a man of genuine ability. At this moment, the voice of the woman in green robes drifts from outside the carriage. Great National Master, may I enter? Enter, you respond languidly. The eldest princess, draped in magnificent robes, kneels respectfully to the side and asks with a smile, I wonder if the National Master is satisfied with this journey? It is acceptable, you nod with indifference. I had no particular destination in mind anyway. The woman smiles faintly, her posture relaxing. This journey to the capital will certainly not disappoint the National Master. I truly will not be disappointed, for I had no expectations to begin with. You look out the window and speak calmly. I simply wish to ride in this. The woman's smile faltered. She found herself at a loss for words. What is your name? You asked casually. Song Qian, she replied with a nod, turning her gaze back toward the window. Observing your indifferent demeanor, Song Qian gripped her collar tightly, nerves fraying, and probed to see what the national advisor thought of the Daqian dynasty. I have no particular opinion. It is much like the dynasties that came before it. You spoke calmly. If an emperor defeats his rivals and shows compassion for the common people, and should there be no natural disasters or man-made calamities, then it is a prosperous reign. You paused for a moment before adding, but history is always in motion. Perhaps you, too, will eventually become nothing more than a page in a history book. Who can say for sure? Song Qian could not help but retort, but you are the national advisor of Daqian. I could just as easily be a subject of the Great Tang or a national advisor of the Great Xia. You turned your head, fixed a calm, attentive gaze upon Song Qian, and smiled faintly. Furthermore, I shall never appear in the annals of history, never. The caravan continued its journey. Along the way, local officials from every prefecture knelt to pay their respects to the immortal, yet you paid them no mind. Compared to this current state of being perched high above the world, you found yourself longing for the days of freedom when you were merely a constable in Qingnu town. To become an immortal and step onto the path of cultivation meant that the vibrant tapestry of the human world you once witnessed became increasingly distant. Perhaps this is why those who walk the path of immortality prioritize the pursuit of power over the cultivation of the heart. The less I see, hear, and experience, the more I shall eventually become a distant, unreachable immortal after emerging from seclusion. Simply judging one's worth by the measure of their power is not inherently wrong, yet you always felt as though something vital were missing. The carriage finally arrived at the capital. The imperial guards cleared a path along the main thoroughfare as the commoners on both sides prostrated themselves to welcome the national advisor. With the imperial court, the civil and military officials and the emperor had long been waiting in anticipation. Furthermore, they were awaiting the arrival of the grand princess. The eunuch at the entrance announced her presence in a high-pitched, resonant tone. Song Chen, clad in magnificent black robes, walked with steady, measured steps into the hall, followed closely by a sedan carriage. The entire court of officials and the emperor were stunned. Where is the national advisor? The guard gestured toward the carriage, not daring to speak a word, implying that the national advisor remained inside and refused to emerge. The emperor immediately bellowed, Have you been negligent in your reception of the national advisor? The guard waved his hands in a panic. We slaves pleaded for him to grant an audience with your majesty, but the advisor still refused to step out of the carriage. You fools. The emperor raged, How dare you speak of granting an audience? It is I who should be the one paying respects to the national advisor. The officials remained silent, inwardly cursing the guard. After all, they were not the ones being scolded. The emperor hurried down the steps. Standing respectfully by the palanquin, he cupped his hands and spoke, Song Weilong requests an audience with the Grand Preceptor. For a long while, there was no movement from within the palanquin. Song Weilong's expression tensed and he bowed his waist even lower. Grand Preceptor, if there is anything that displeases you, please speak your mind plainly. I shall spare no effort to rectify it. Finally, the curtain of the palanquin parted slowly. A figure emerged with a languid air, casting a casual glance around before settling his gaze upon the man bowing before him. You are the Emperor? He asked, sounding skeptical. Hastily kowtowing once more, the Emperor replied, I am your humble follower Song Weilong, Emperor of the Great Qian dynasty. Every word he uttered was carefully calculated to place you firmly in a position of supreme authority. You nodded in approval, not bad. To understand the etiquette of serving the Grand Preceptor is only as it should be. However, regarding my Great Qian, you speak of the Imperial Palace as if it were your own domain. By this logic, if your tone implies we are equals, does that not make me your father? The moment these words were spoken, the complexions of the officials shifted instantly. This was a matter concerning the dignity of the throne, an incredibly sensitive affair. The veteran officials hoped the Emperor would restrain his anger, while the newcomers prayed he would exercise caution and avoid clashing with an immortal. Yet, in the very next moment, everyone was left stunned into silence. The Emperor suddenly raised his head, his eyes burning with fervor. He flung his sleeves aside, clasped his hands, and shouted in a booming voice, Foster father! Both the old guard and the new officials stood frozen. Before absolute power, the authority of the throne is truly nothing more than a joke. After the morning court session, you left the palace to wander the capital. No sooner had you passed the city gates than you sensed someone tailing you. In a flash, you appeared directly before the figure. The man stammered in panic, This humble one is the nine-heaven eunuch of the palace. I merely wish to catch a glimpse of the Grand Preceptor's divine countenance. If I have caused any offense, I beg for mercy. You recalled that this man was said to be one of the 10 great masters of the martial world. The nine-heaven eunuch offered a bitter smile. Before the Grand Preceptor, how could I dare to call myself a master? Perhaps only one other immortal could lay claim to such a title. Seeing his sincere demeanor, you lowered your guard and asked casually, Then do you know the origins of this person? He has existed since the founding of the Great Qian. He once charged into the palace alone, hung his sword above the head of the previous emperor, and seized 50 miles of land to establish his own sect. He is exceptionally arrogant and deeply vindictive. Since you have previously slain his disciple, you must remain vigilant. The nine-heaven eunuch paused, then lowered his voice. He is currently in closed-door seclusion. The outcome is uncertain, but if he successfully emerges, he will be truly invincible. He then added tentatively, One is at their most vulnerable while in closed-door seclusion. If one were to seize the opportunity, perhaps he could be sent to the cycle of reincarnation early. You smiled faintly and patted the nine-heaven eunuch on the shoulder. To play the fisherman waiting for the prey to tire lacked the qualifications for such a game. Though you remained as calm as a gentle breeze, the nine-heaven eunuch was drenched in a cold sweat. If he truly emerges, what will we do? You laughed lightly. At worst, I shall find a place to enter seclusion as well. Several hundred years later, I will emerge and shatter his flying sword with a single strike. After all, I am immortal. I shall simply outlive everyone, and in the end, I will be the one standing as the undisputed master of this world. Bidding farewell to Zhu Tiansui, you turned the corner of the street, and upon seeing a young woman who could swallow an entire skewer of candied hawthorns in one bite, you could not help but glance at her a few times. Unexpectedly, a frigid arrow shot out from the shadows. With a flick of your hand, you deflected it. An old man with flowing white hair and beard emerged, claiming to be an overseas chi refiner, wishing to negotiate with you. At the border, you slaughtered 60 of my fellow practitioners. Currently, my companion and I are hiding in the capital. If you do not meet our demands, before we die, we shall cast a spell to slaughter several thousand commoners. Do not attempt to stop me, for the spell takes only half a breath. Can you kill me within half a breath? After speaking, he prepared to state his conditions, but you merely shook your head. Then I shall have to avenge those few thousand commoners. The man was horrified. You are the state preceptor of the Great Qian. Should you not protect the populace at all costs? If you were to accept our demands, the tragedy could be averted. Regrettably, he did not know that you have never once compromised for the sake of others. You reminded him that if he dared to act, you would not only slay the two of them but also raze their overseas lands and eradicate all remaining remnants. The threat was mutual. Consider the price you are willing to pay very carefully. The man trembled with rage. Suddenly, he realized his target was the very young woman you had noticed earlier. But before his spell could be activated, you flashed to his side and shattered half of his skull. Another individual, hiding 800 meters away and preparing to flee, was still detected by you. A blast of dragon form chi was unleashed, obliterating him. You shook your head. It would have been difficult to stop both simultaneously, but their minds were in disarray, and by daring to let you find an opening, they sealed their own fate. That night, the door to your room creaked open, and the young woman from earlier stepped inside. Her name was Cheng Xiaoqian, the daughter of a 7th-rank civil official. She said her father told her the state preceptor seemed interested in her and had sent her specifically to serve you. You pondered for a moment and asked if she knew how to play chess. Cheng Xiaoqian nodded. I invite the state preceptor to take the first move. Then I shall not stand on ceremony. You picked up the rook, and with the first move, you drifted it from the bottom left corner in an unconventional manner, capturing her pawn. The rook flew into check. Cheng Xiaoqian was stunned. Is it even possible to play like that? They played chess throughout the night, and Cheng Xiaoqian did not win a single game. She looked at you with a pitiful expression. Can you not let me win just one game? You gazed at her face with composure and spoke in a low voice. How adorable. If I were to deliver a punch, you would likely cry for a long time. Cheng Xiaoqian shed tears in a panic and said earnestly, I beg the state preceptor to spare my life. 3 years later, while strolling through the imperial palace with Cheng Xiaoqian, you ultimately chose to depart without a word of farewell. Your endless lifespan had made you deeply realize that one should not grow too close to others. On a day of heavy snowfall, you departed in silence. When Cheng Xiaoqian discovered your absence, she found only a farewell letter and the manual of the profound soul path left upon the table. News that the imperial preceptor had left the capital spread rapidly, yet as the years passed, not a single trace of you remained. With the immortal gone, the great Qian martial arts world surged into turbulence once again, eventually reviving the ranking of the world's 10 great masters. Cheng Xiaojian, having received your grace to tread the path of immortality, ascended to become a golden core stage elder, the third immortal to appear in the great Qian since you. Yet despite her exalted status, every time snow began to fall, she would stand by the window watching the flakes drift. She missed you. You had set out amidst a great snowstorm. Would you ever return when the flowers bloomed? Meanwhile, you found the most rhythmic way to coexist with time in the wilderness, cultivating crops that ripened with the seasons and fruit trees heavy with harvest. Though you remained indifferent to the pursuit of tranquility, this was the only way to truly perceive the passage of time. Otherwise, a single deep meditation could span countless years. In the blink of an eye, a sapling becomes a towering shade, time silently altering all things, while you remained unchanged. You knew full well that observing the mundane world was meaningless, yet you insisted on witnessing its entire cycle to comprehend the power of time, a force to which you were still a stranger. After all, your lifespan was near infinite. With no end in sight, 30 years passed, then 40 as the trees flourished with lush foliage, until in the 50th year, the tree bloomed with vibrant flowers. By the 51st year, the tree was felled. You stared in astonishment at the woodcutter, unable to find the words to speak. The woodcutter answered honestly, I have kept my eye on this tree for many years. It is ready to be used as firewood. If you wish, I can share some with you. After a moment of silence, you shook your head, staring only at the stump. A profound realization stirred within you, that even with a long life, one can still succumb to calamity. At that moment, your state of mind underwent a metamorphosis, and the insights into time you had gathered over decades quietly took root. When you opened your eyes once more, you finally understood the mysteries of time. Everything around you seemed to slow for an instant. Immediately after, grass and flowers grew with wild fervor, cycling through decay and rebirth in a constant loop. The manipulation of time had become your new ability. Looking around, the scenery remained the same, yet the world had moved on. You decided to descend the mountain, but before departing, you took the longevity points you had accumulated over 50 years and poured them all into your strength, instantly achieving a breakthrough to 85 points. Power surged through your veins like a torrent, so overwhelming that you had to collapse 3 mountains before your body could adapt. It was another spring in the palace, and Cheng Xiaoqian was tending to the peach tree, waiting for it to bloom. Thanks to her cultivation, her beauty remained unchanged, yet her temperament had grown increasingly idle. One wonders if she was influenced by a certain someone. While she was lost in thought, the peach tree before her suddenly sprouted, budding and blooming with deep crimson flowers. Directly following this came a voice, What are you thinking about? Cheng Xiaoqian was startled, stunned into silence. With tears welling in her eyes, she turned, and that familiar silhouette was smiling at her. Cheng Xiaoqian's eyes brimmed with tears, and at last she could no longer suppress the question held in her heart. Back then, why didn't you take me with you? You smile and answer, for you had once promised to meet again. Though she never expected the reunion to take so long, Cheng Xiaoqian sheds tears of joy, her smile radiant against the backdrop of blooming peach blossoms. In this moment, she suddenly realizes that you did not return because the flowers bloomed. Rather, your return brought not only the peach blossoms but the apricot flowers as well. Upon returning to the palace, Cheng Xiaoqian asks softly if you will leave without a word as you did before. You shake your head, stating you are weary and wish to wander no more, intending to cultivate right here in the imperial capital. Cheng Xiaoqian happily tells you of her progress with the Xuanhun Dao manual. She has been cultivating diligently without pause, successfully condensing 50 strands of soul mystery qi. You are slightly astonished, as you have only condensed 30 strands yourself. It seems her talent is truly exceptional. Within a month, news of a man's return to the palace reaches the emperor's ears. The crown prince, Song Yun, is the first to request an audience, wondering if the grand preceptor has finally returned. Recalling the pride his father once displayed when granting you absolute authority, Song Yun suppresses his excitement, deciding to hold back his report, and instead chooses to personally seek you out to reminisce about the past, hoping to cultivate a favorable relationship. Upon seeing an old acquaintance, you merely nod in acknowledgement, shortly before seeing Song Weilong, now frail with age, trembling as he runs towards you, calling you foster father repeatedly. Perhaps in his youth, Song Weilong had wished for your departure, for after all you stood above the imperial power itself, yet in his declining years, he has come to yearn deeply for your presence. Hearing that you intend to remain here to cultivate, he immediately expresses his devotion, declaring that as long as Great Qian's exists, it is yours to command. After the exchange of pleasantries, you watch the father and son depart. Feeling a sense of exhaustion, you realize it is time to form your golden core. You were meant to form your core 20 years ago, but enlightenment delayed your progress. Now, back in this setting, you intend to utilize the imperial destiny of the capital to achieve your golden core breakthrough. The day arrives when you decide to go into seclusion to finalize your core. Previously, the golden core created by the Shohun Dao manual was classified by color according to the cultivation technique, with the number of colors determining its grade. 3 colors is the lowest, 5 colors the highest. The combat prowess of a 5-colored golden core exceeds that of a 3-colored one by 2/10. Recalling your own turtle breathing technique, you pray only that your golden core is not shaped like a green tortoise. After years of effort, combined with the support of the kingdom's destiny, everything flows naturally, and as you finally open your eyes, a golden light flashes, the core is formed. As the saying goes, only upon forming the golden core can one truly be considered a person of the heavens. As you officially advance in your cultivation, you look within your body and discover a 7-colored bead rotating steadily, having somehow condensed a 7-colored core, yet fortunately, everything remains stable and normal. With the golden core complete, you are capable of creating your own divine abilities. You decide to focus on the power of time, developing a technique to freeze time itself. In the 80th year of the Great Chan Weilong era, Song Weilong passes away and Crown Prince Song Yun succeeds the throne. Before breathing his last, Song Weilong meets you one final time, begging you to protect Great Chan in the future. You reply that while you may shield them from natural disasters, human tragedies are beyond your concern. Song Weilong nodded, for every dynasty must eventually face its decline. After Song Yun ascended to the throne, he remained incredibly respectful toward you, seeking your counsel even for the most minor administrative decisions. After being questioned once or twice, you told him to decide for himself. There is no need to ask me further. Song Yun was delighted. He complied obediently until the 10th year of his reign, when you retreated into seclusion to seek enlightenment for your golden core. Song Yun ordered a secret chamber to be constructed 100 meters beneath the imperial palace for your cultivation, with Chung Chaoqian standing guard outside. By the 140th year of the Great Qian dynasty, a cataclysm shook the world, causing the immortal sect to tremble. The earth sank for 30 miles as a figure soared above the sect. He arrogantly declared, "I have achieved the golden core at the age of 135. Today my core is formed, peerless in this world, unrivaled under the heavens." All knew that the old immortal had emerged from seclusion. Song Yun immediately sent high-ranking officials with lavish gifts to the immortal sect to offer congratulations, but they were coldly turned away by the old immortal, who demanded that the emperor visit him in person. Having no choice but to yield, Song Yun traveled to the immortal sect himself, only for the old immortal to decree that if the Great Chan dynasty wished to continue, the entire nation must erect statues to worship him as a god. As for the current imperial preceptor, the old immortal sneered, telling Song Yun that if he wished to rely on him, he had best abandon that intention now. Though he has reached the golden core stage, he is not worth a single blow before a celestial immortal descended from the heavens like myself. Moreover, he is merely an ant. He gave Song Yun 3 days to deliberate. By then come to the capital yourself to receive my teachings. 3 days later, because Song Yun could not make contact with you, he was forced into a corner and had no choice but to agree. Seeing your statue within the city, the old immortal recalled that you had once slain his direct disciple. Sensing the perfect opportunity to claim your life, he ordered Song Yun to summon you. He intended to exact his revenge personally, but to protect the Great Chan dynasty, Song Yun was reluctantly forced to reveal that you were in deep seclusion. Hearing this, the old immortal laughed aloud. "With such low cultivation, you dare to enter seclusion?" He mocked you, then prepared to swing his sword to force you out. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Stop!" Chung Xiaoqian drew her blade to block his path. She was the 3rd cultivator to appear in Great Chan. However, the old immortal, being at the golden core realm, felt no fear, and with a single strike of his sword, he sent Chung Xiaoqian reeling. Just as Chung Xiaoqian prepared to risk her life, a cry rang out from the side. An elderly overseas qi refining cultivator spoke. "Cheng Xiaoqian is gifted with extraordinary talent. We should preserve her soul so that we may seize her body later." The old immortal nodded in agreement. Upon hearing this, Chung Xiaoqian gritted her teeth and condensed all the profound soul true qi in her body into a single desperate attack against the elder. The old man was terrified. Perceiving the imminent danger, the old immortal swung his blade, shattering the training grounds in a single strike. The old immortal sneered, "If you still dare to resist, I shall drag your state preceptor out and execute him right before your eyes. I wonder what expression you will wear then." At that moment, Chung Xiaoqian felt a sudden stir within her, sensing a surge of profound primordial spirit energy. Your seclusion was coming to an end. Deep within the underground chamber, you seized the iron pillar and thrust it upward, sending it soaring through the earth and into the sky. Following the golden light, you leaped forth, wielding the iron pillar as a colossal sword to force the old immortal back. That overseas cultivator could not dodge in time and was struck, left on the verge of death. You gazed coldly at the old immortal. "I did not seek you out, yet you chose to deliver yourself to my doorstep." The old immortal replied coldly, "The current fortune of the world cannot sustain 2 immortals at once. Only by slaying you can I attain the Tao." You cast a glance at the wounded Chung Xiaoqian, your expression darkening. "You are merely courting your own demise." The very next moment, the only 2 golden core cultivators in the world prepared to clash, yet suddenly all things stood frozen. Time came to a standstill and only you moved with lightning speed toward the old immortal, pouring every single point you had accumulated over the past 6 months into your raw strength. You unleashed a strike of 115 strength points directly onto the old immortal's head. In the old immortal's eyes, a look of pure disbelief emerged. Yet unable to react, he was forced to sacrifice 1,000 years of his life, his body drenched in blood as he struggled to remain standing. You hovered in midair, your expression cold. Today, I shall let the world witness what it means to be peerless. The old immortal was left nearly dazed. He had made a name for himself in his youth and spent 200 years of arduous cultivation to form his core. He had assumed that upon exiting seclusion, he would be invincible. How could you have risen so rapidly within 100 years to rival him? He laughed mockingly. This only confirms that you are a talentless wretch. Before the old immortal could even react, another punch slammed squarely into him. You pinned him down, driving him deep into the earth. Amidst the ruins, the old immortal gasped for breath. The sheer suppression of power left the martial arts experts watching from afar struck dumb with awe. You looked upon him with contempt. Arrogant since your youth, the moment you exited seclusion, you came seeking death. The old immortal insisted that the fortune of heaven and earth was insufficient for two immortals to ascend. Cultivation is inherently a struggle, you retorted. If one does not strive, what is the point of cultivating? He laughed coldly. Once you achieve the nascent soul stage and ascend to the immortal realm, you will surely be struck down by the Yanue immortal sect. No matter how strong you are in this realm, you are nothing but a lowly ant in that place. You scoffed. If that is the case, what exactly are you fighting for? Are you fighting to be nothing more than an ant? The old immortal fell silent for a long time before replying. If one does not ascend, how can one achieve immortality? In the end, it is for the sake of ascension that we seek eternal life, only to begin the cycle anew. You offer a faint smile. Since that is the case, there is truly no need for you to compare yourself to me. I am an eternal being with infinite lifespan, yet this old immortal, ignorant of the truth, still wished to mock me, claiming my ultimate fate would be nothing more than that of an ant. For such words, I would have wiped him from existence the moment I set foot in this lower realm. You then flick a pebble, and with that single motion, it pierces through his very soul. The old immortal vanishes completely, leaving only a fine drizzling mist to fall from the sky. This was the fall of a golden core cultivator, an event that sent tremors across the world. The world did not expect that only 14 days after emerging from seclusion, the old immortal, despite his grandiose declarations, would have his life ended in such a manner. Seeing the battle conclude, Trin Xiaoshan drags the wounded Le over to your side. Brother, are you injured? You wipe the blood from her face with a pained expression, whispering, Why are you so foolish? If you could not best him in battle, why did you not flee? Trin Xiaoqian sobs, I was afraid of disturbing your cultivation. What would have happened if your core formation had failed? You smile, telling her that if such a situation arises again, there is no need to intervene, for even if my core were not yet formed, I could still slay him. In this world, I am unrivaled. It is essential to rest and recover for a few days. You reflect that Trin Xiaoqian is not an eternal being, and if she desires immortality, she must eventually ascend to the immortal realm. You wish to journey to the immortal realm to visit Xiaoshuner, who entered the Yanyu sect long ago. Therefore, to prepare for your ascension, and to secure a foothold in the immortal realm, you resolve to dedicate yourself to creating an invincible killing technique. Remembering the overseas chi refiner who stood beside the old immortal, you fly directly overseas to eradicate the remaining remnants of his faction. Seeing your power, the chi refiner knows how to read the tides of fortune and immediately submits, expressing his complete sincerity. The reason the old immortal was willing to cooperate with them earlier this year was because they possessed a ritual formation. This formation not only enhances one's cultivation, but most importantly, it can assist a mortal in becoming a deity. According to his explanation, the world is not merely one single realm, but a part of the myriad heavens and worlds. To ascend is to journey to a vastly more powerful higher plane. However, worlds, whether large or small, are like mere drops of water in an ocean, and even a human body with all its meridians is but a weak and fragile golden core existing for only a few hundred years. Because the world lacks a center, a person who becomes a deity serves as the center of all creation. Once one attains godhood, all things in the world will nurture you in return, and you will become stronger than the very world itself. You ask with curiosity, how do you know of such things? 500 years ago, the Golden Core founder of our sect left behind this knowledge. Unfortunately, our founder lacked the sufficient aptitude when attempting to ascend as a deity and perished under the 10,000 heavenly lightning tribulations. A standard ascension involves only ordinary lightning, while an ascension to godhood invites the kingdom-shattering, 10,000-fold lightning tribulation. You fall into deep thought. Did the founder perish because the lightning tribulation is capped at 10,000 strikes? Or does it mean that if I am stronger than the founder, I will trigger an even more devastating heavenly tribulation? The chi refiner offered a wry smile. The lightning tribulation is not purely a misfortune, for the greater the intensity, the more profound the benefits received upon overcoming it. You then asked if he had heard any rumors regarding the descent of immortals from other worlds. For instance, a single palm strike annihilating an entire city. Upon hearing this, the chi refiner frowned, seemingly recalling something, and spoke in a deep, hushed tone. It is recorded in the founder's ancient texts that 6 million years ago it appeared once, also destroying an entire city with a single strike. Yet the founder speculated that the master of that hand was not an immortal, because the messengers who descended from the Yanyue immortal sect were unaware of this occurrence. If it were a peer from the immortal realm, the disturbance caused by their cultivation techniques could never have escaped the scrutiny of the Yanyue immortal sect. Therefore, the messengers of the Yanyue immortal sect speculated it was an entity from another world, and though the specific plane of existence remains unknown, it had certainly transcended into the ranks of the saints. You stared fixedly at the chi refiner, the light in your eyes tranquil like a deep pool of water, and articulated each word slowly. I witnessed it 100 years ago. The chi refiner's body trembled instantly like duckweed caught in a violent storm, and he nearly collapsed where he stood. 600 years ago, 100 years ago, that would mean the cycle repeats every 500 years. A nascent soul cultivator likely lacks the strength to withstand such a force. You have truly seen it? The chi refiner remained somewhat incredulous. Yes, you nodded. Your gaze gradually drifted as if you were sinking into distant memories. That hand was immense, crackling with lightning, much like small serpents coiling and darting across its surface, and then it simply descended, crushing downward. With a single blow, the vast city simply vanished. The chi refiner shook, nodding. It is identical to the account in our founder's records. Then, what on earth was that great hand? Why would it descend upon this world to annihilate a city? None of them could fathom the reason. Then what benefit is there in attaining godhood? You shifted the subject and asked, upon ascending to godhood, you will become the fastest cultivator in the entire world, simultaneously accelerating your own mastery of the great Tao. These truths are all recorded in the teachings of the ancestral master. You nod in agreement. Having never truly intended to slay these chi practitioners, their newfound subservience has extinguished your desire for blood. With a flicker of azure light in your eyes, the entire secret chamber is uprooted, soaring into the sky and clearing the imperial island. The gaze of the chi practitioners upon you is, naturally, filled with even greater terror. Such a divine ability is truly capable of reaching the heavens and shaking the earth. You stand aloft, looking down upon the gathered chi practitioners, your back turned to the sun as it sinks toward the horizon. The surface of the sea glistens, reflecting the orange glow of the sunset against your verdant robes. With a calm smile you speak, in that case I shall rely on you all to help me ascend to godhood. In the 35th year of the Great Qian calendar, the construction of your spiritual statues began across the entire nation. Each region is guarded by a Qi practitioner, tasked with the duty of polishing and offering incense to your spiritual effigy. Any commoner who comes to pay their respects shall receive your blessings. While it cannot be said that every wish is granted, they are guaranteed to experience at least one stroke of good fortune within the next 3 days. This has led to an increasing number of people arriving to venerate your statues, and all do so with sincere devotion. Meanwhile, you remain within the imperial city, sequestered in your own cultivation. As of now, you have yet to discern any concrete benefit from this worship, though you reason that such things require time to accumulate. At this stage, there is no need for haste. Nevertheless, you remain vigilant. Should any key practitioner dare to rebel, you will immediately slaughter every last one of them. If even a single one turns traitor, all shall face death. They were all originally worthy of execution, and it was only your fleeting mercy that allowed them to live this long. Should they dare to scheme again, your heart will not waver a second time. Furthermore, your own cultivation progress remains an arduous journey. Your focus currently lies in the period of concentrating the profound soul, intending to compose the Nether Realm Absolute Domain, a scroll capable of forcing an opponent into single combat. Yet, this goal remains distant. Based on your current progress, you estimate it will take at least a century more before you can manifest the profound Soul Dao scroll. On the other hand, that city-destroying entity that emerged from the void remains in existence that causes you constant concern. It is akin to a rabid dog. You know not when it will spring forth to strike, and lacking the power to slay it preemptively, you are forced to wait for its inevitable attack. This sensation is profoundly unsettling. You heave a sigh, complete another cycle of circulating your profound soul chi, rise to stretch your limbs, and slowly step toward the door. Cheng Qiaoqian, who had been tending to the peach blossoms, looks up. Brother, you have finished your cultivation. A smile blossoms on her lips. She clasps her hands behind her back, sways gracefully toward you with a playful gait, and tilting her head says, Brother Lin, do you find the peach blossoms I planted beautiful? You cast a glance at the matured peach tree, nodding with a smile, and complimented it by saying it was as beautiful as she was. Chen Qioshan's face flushed red. She felt a surge of joy in her heart, yet she panted coyly, You are only teasing me. Seeing her expression, you suddenly became lost in thought, falling silent for a moment before asking, Qianer, what if one day we are forced to part ways? Why would you say that? Chen Qioshan furrowed her brows, her expression turning tense. You offered a faint smile and replied, I only said if, and besides, such a day may very well come. We both have a long, arduous path ahead of us. Chen Qioshan's brow furrowed even tighter, and she asked in confusion, Why can we not walk that path together? I of course wish for us to walk together as well. You nodded, pausing for a moment as you reached out a hand, adding, But reality is rarely as ideal as we imagine, is it? Chen Qioshan nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in your words, yet her heart remained filled with reluctance. After a long silence, she replied in a soft voice, If we truly must part, then we shall surely meet again. You nodded, your tone firm and resolute as you spoke. Indeed, for every parting serves only to make our eventual reunion all the more glorious. In the 80th year of the Great Chan dynasty, Songyun abdicated the throne to the crown prince. Your great breath-holding technique had reached the state of grand completion. You stood but a single, short step away from the threshold of the nascent soul stage. Furthermore, your golden core had begun to reveal one of its true hues, a brilliant, pristine white. This was the color of time, of the passing years, and of the light itself. It was the manifestation of your great Tao. You were now capable of freely manipulating the flow of time within a 30-meter radius. Chen Qiuxian's cultivation progress was equally smooth, so remarkably smooth, in fact, that it left you astonished. Unlike your reliance on the great breath-holding technique to find a shortcut, Chen Qiuxian had achieved this through her own prowess in condensing the profound soul Tao field. She had now formed her golden core, and with thousands of strands of profound soul qi within her, she was ready to inscribe her own Tao manual. One could say that Chen Qiuxian's cultivation relied purely on innate talent. However, the existence of such high-gifted individuals always shared one common trait: they were destined to be extraordinary. After a century of imperial rule, a rainbow manifested in the sky, stretching out like a vast celestial bridge. Under the gaze of all the citizens in the capital, a golden palanquin descended from the heavens, crossing the rainbow to hover above the imperial city. Two young acolytes with peculiar appearances stepped out from either side of the palanquin, and with hands clasped in salute toward the earth, they proclaimed in a loud voice, "The upper sect descends to accept disciples." As you stood in the courtyard, you realized this scene was much like when the immortals came to take Shao Shuer as a disciple years ago. Yet the times had changed. Back then you were no match for those immortals, and your voice carried little weight. Now, you had become the greatest under heaven, capable of dictating terms to these very immortals. Though you wondered just who they intended to take as a disciple, you were still lost in thought when the great golden palanquin suddenly descended, coming to a halt directly before you. As the faint golden light receded, you could see the intricate patterns carved upon it, resembling the mythical true dragon. Who would have thought that in such a small, desolate corner of the world, there would exist a cultivator on the verge of the nascent soul stage? Impressive. A female voice resonated, brimming with arrogance. The two peculiar young acolytes hurried to the front of the sedan, bowing their backs as if prepared to serve as human footstools. The sedan door swung open, and a pair of jade-white feet stepped onto the backs of the two acolytes. Looking down from above, the woman spoke again. "However, the person I seek is not you, Linji." Cheng Xiaochen ran in, shouting. Seeing the scene before her, she frowned, her heart filled with wariness. The woman's crimson eyes fixed upon Cheng Xiaochen, her expression obscured by a veil as she smiled and said, "It is this young lady. Come with me to the sect." Her tone carried an air of absolute, undeniable haughtiness. You asked with suspicion, "Are you the sect master of the ninth mountain in the immortal realm?" The woman spoke once more, her voice laced with pride. "Have you never heard of it?" You shook your head. "I have never heard of it either." Cheng Xiaoqian chimed in, also shaking her head. The woman glanced at the two of you, a hint of exasperation in her eyes as she waved her hand dismissively. "It is enough for you to know that it is formidable. I am here to recruit disciples, not to provide explanations." You remain somewhat doubtful. Is it not the Yanyue immortal sect that is supposed to be recruiting disciples? The woman looked towards you. She did not seem surprised that you were aware of such matters. After all, both of you were cultivators nearing the nascent soul stage. It was only natural that you would possess some knowledge regarding the state of the immortal realm. Consequently, she restrained her fiery temper and explained that while the Yanyu immortal sect was indeed your upper realm, recruitment required only the mutual consent of both parties. Moreover, this young lady shares a fated connection with our ninth mountain. She was always meant to come to our ninth mountain. Besides, for tens of thousands of years, the Yanyu immortal sect has not produced a single great emperor figure. Even if they currently have a saintess, she is merely a great emperor seed, not a great emperor herself. Compared to our ninth mountain, they are undoubtedly a tier lower. You continued to knit your brows, feeling that all of this was far too coincidental. Why was it that little Shuer possessed extraordinary talent in the past, and now Cheng Xiaoqian is the same? The woman seemed to perceive your skepticism, and explained that this small world of yours possesses only a finite amount of destiny and natural talent, and those with exceptional aptitude are naturally drawn to one another. In other words, the heavenly Tao creates opportunities for you to meet, thereby elevating your collective destiny. As the woman spoke, her crimson eyes swept across the two of you once more, and she could not help but offer praise. For the two of you to reach the golden core stage in such a cramped, desolate place lacking in spirit. Cheng Xiaoqian stepped forward suddenly, her expression grave as she asked the woman, "If I agree, can you allow both Linji and me to enter the ninth mountain together?" The woman assessed you, then gently shook her fair, slender finger before her. "That is not possible, and do you know why?" Cheng Xiaoqian blurted out the question, almost in a tone of interrogation. The woman looked at you and explained that he is a man without destiny, one whom heaven and earth cannot grasp. Furthermore, his current cultivation base is too low, which would inevitably affect the others. "We have no need for such a person in the ninth mountain, absolutely no need." The woman emphasized this, adding another sentence. Cheng Xiaoqian frowned, unable to endure hearing such words. You immediately shook your head and declared, "I will not go." The woman's feet pressed down harder on the backs of the two young acolytes, the pressure forcing them to gasp for breath repeatedly. After a moment, she continued, "If you wish to remain with him forever, you must cultivate until you ascend. You are currently only at the golden core stage, while he is already nearing the nascent soul stage. When the time comes for him to ascend first, you will remain behind to cultivate in this lowly world." Furthermore, it is highly probable that because he ascended, having taken the final opportunity for ascension with him, you will lose your own path to ascension. You will be left with no choice but to die of old age in this minuscule world. Are you truly willing to accept such a fate? Cheng Chaojian's eyes grew bewildered, and she looked at you with a plea for help. You frowned and asked, "How can we possibly trust your words?" Trust? The woman seemed to find the question absurd. She let out a peal of laughter that lasted for some time before she finally ceased. She directed her gaze at the two of you and said, "You have no choice but to believe me. You have no other options. Even though I have descended into this small world, I still possess the foundation of a nascent soul. You have no power to resist me, do you?" Her laughter was permeated with an arrogance that seemed to saturate the very heavens and earth. You shook your head. A nascent soul is not enough to qualify. You stepped forward, and the gentle breeze suddenly ceased. I am a seven-colored Dan. Time within a 30-meter radius around you came to a halt. You were the only one capable of movement within it. The woman's face twisted in agony as she struggled within the temporal barrier. Her eyes began to shift, fixating on you with profound terror. How could a cultivator who had not yet reached the nascent soul stage come into contact with a great Tao as supreme as time? She truly refused to believe it. You stepped before her and said, "When I discuss matters, I still prefer that we stand on equal ground." The temporal hold on the woman's face shattered. She frowned as she looked at you, her tone usually so haughty, rarely holding such a hint of gravity. To enter the great Tao of time before even reaching the nascent soul stage? You are indeed a genius. It is a pity that you are a man without destiny. Otherwise, even my ninth mountain would have had to fight over you. You smiled in response. "I have no need for your competition. I only wish to know how you can guarantee that you will treat Canner well." The woman did not answer this question, but instead shifted the topic. "You have all practiced the Xuanhun Dao Zhang. This is a cultivation manual that my ninth mountain sect scattered across the immortal world. Furthermore, only the first volume was ever released. The goal was to seek out geniuses across the myriad realms who are compatible with the Xuanhun Dao Zhang. Yet this young girl has managed to reach the golden core stage in a place so lacking in spiritual energy and opportunity, and has even condensed thousands of strands of Xuanhun energy. Her aptitude has already reached the quasi-saint level. Although she may not compare to a great emperor, if she matures, she will become a formidable figure capable of suppressing an entire region. Therefore, my ninth mountain must take her. Otherwise, to remain trapped in such a small, desolate place would be a grave waste of her natural talent." Your clear eyes flickered and you shook your head, stating that she had yet to prove her sincerity. Although the woman had spoken at length, who could verify what was truth and what was deception? This concerned the future path of Cheng Chaoqian, and you could not simply set your mind at ease. The woman's upper body had now broken free from the stagnation caused by time. As she rubbed her chin in contemplation, a sudden smile touched her lips. "But you all must eventually ascend, is that not correct? And upon ascending to the immortal world, one must choose a sect. Otherwise, with your current strength, you will only be hunted by the outer realm heavenly demons. Moreover, it is impossible for you and this young girl to ascend together, is it? At most, you can suppress your cultivation for 300 years, after which you will have no choice but to face the nascent soul lightning tribulation and ascend to the immortal world. However, the same cannot be said for this young girl as she practices the Xuanhun Dao Zhang of my ninth mountain. Her progress is inherently slow, and having fallen into this minor world, where spiritual energy and fate are scarce, it will take her at least 500 years to reach the nascent soul stage." The woman's words paused as if she had suddenly recalled something. The corner of her mouth beneath the mysterious veil curled into a smile. She continued, "If you ascend, the fate of this small world will likely be insufficient to support the emergence of another nascent soul cultivator. In that case, the girl's ultimate fate may simply be to wither away and die of natural causes. It may sound like a peaceful conclusion, but whether it is truly good or not, only she herself can know. If you ascend, Cheng Chaoqian may never see you again. For both of you, this is far from a desirable outcome." You tapped the tip of your foot against the ground, causing ripples of opaque white to emanate outward. The surrounding time began to exhibit the terrifying phenomenon of flowing in reverse. The woman's eyes brightened, and her tone finally became grave and firm. "If you were not a person devoid of fate, my ninth mountain would absolutely. It is a pity, truly a pity. You have already reached the introductory level of the great Tao of time. Your future achievements would have been at least that of a quasi-saint powerhouse." You then asked, "What is the meaning behind this person devoid of fate?" The woman spread her arms and laughed. "There is no special meaning. It is simply that you possess no fate. You have no opportunities. You cannot be calculated by the heavenly Tao. Everything you possess can only be attained through your own efforts." Upon hearing this, your brows furrowed even deeper, and the speed of the reversing time around you began to slow. "According to what you say, being a person devoid of fate is not necessarily a bad thing." "No," the woman waved a hand in front of her, smiling as she spoke. "A person without destiny is a wretched existence. Because they are not recognized by the heavenly Tao, they can never become a quasi-saint, and even less can they walk the path toward becoming a great emperor in the future. In this lifetime, your cultivation will only ever reach the heaven-mending realm. Consider it like a cup of water. For others, their limit is a full cup, though for various reasons they may not always be able to fill it, but your limit was fixed at half a cup the moment you were born. No matter how hard you strive to fill it, regardless of the method used, you can only ever attain that half cup. The path you walk is a dead end. It was only then that he realized why these immortal realm sects had no need for someone without destiny like him. Yet this shortcoming was of no consequence to him, for he did not rely on traditional cultivation to become powerful. His strength came primarily from the system's point allocation. Cultivation was merely a secondary benchmark. It was fine to have, but its absence would not hinder him. The woman raised a second finger alongside the first, and continued, "Secondly, those without destiny will negatively influence the fortune of those around them, and for the most part, these influences are purely detrimental. In short, I have lived for 30,000 years, and I have never seen a single positive outcome. Therefore, all sects despise those lacking destiny, and would never recruit them." Hearing this, you were not entirely surprised. At most, you would simply continue to allocate points on your own. That in itself was not an issue, but the current matter concerned Chung Chaoqian, so you asked one more question. What kind of treatment will China receive once she arrives at your ninth mountain? The woman's entire body broke free from the temporal lock. Her jade-like feet stepped down from the back of the young acolyte, and she smiled a quasi-saint aptitude. She will certainly become a direct disciple of the mountain master. Once she ascends to a quasi-saint in the future, she could become a sect leader just like me. Her dainty feet touched the ground as her fingers gently caressed the space before her. Time itself began to stagnate, showing signs of reversing against her control. I'm not quite a Junsheng yet, still at the peak of Butian realm. You could say I'm just a hair's breadth away from Junsheng. It's just that my combat prowess is so OP that I became the sect master earlier than expected. The girl explained, slowly walking towards you, and continued, "But I'm very interested in you. I'll suppress my cultivation to the Jindan realm to exchange blows with you, so I can broaden your horizons and show you what true innate talent looks like." You raise an eyebrow, not holding back, directly rolling up your sleeves and retorting, "Yuan Ying isn't qualified enough, let alone Jindan." The girl's lips curled into a prideful smile. "Well, I am invincible among my peers in the Jindan realm." She took a heavy step forward, time flowing rapidly, the surrounding scenery blurring, as if entering a chaotic realm. "Also, I'll use some divine abilities and spells not of the Jindan realm, but their power will definitely be controlled within the Jindan range." Both your hands had neatly rolled up your sleeves, giving the girl a strange look while kindly advising, "I think you should still use your Yuan Ying strength. It's better for you." "Why?" The girl frowned. She raised her hand and tapped in front of her. Time obediently rushed forward, condensing beside her, becoming a protective magic circle. "With this magic circle, you'll never be able to hit my present self. You can only hit my future or past self." But she doesn't care. Matters of the present can only be worn down in non-existent space and time. Her left foot stepped forward, cracking the ground, both fists rising, fist intent surging, faintly with a green light flashing, borrowing power from heaven and earth. You reply, "Because I'm a seven-colored Dan," a single thought condensed into a Yuan Ying. What is a seven-colored Dan? Is it a heavenly Dao Jin Dan? But someone without luck cannot condense a heavenly Dao Jin Dan. The girl was somewhat doubtful but didn't pay too much attention. Being at the peak of the Butian realm like herself, even if she suppressed her cultivation down to a seven-colored Dan, the divine abilities, spells, and comprehension of cultivation she used were not something you could touch. With just this past-future protective formation, she was already standing in an invincible position. She really couldn't imagine how she could lose. The corner of the girl's mouth rose into a smile, looking at you mobilizing your fist techniques, raising her hand, shaking her head, and saying, "Stop showing off those little tricks. It's better to display true divine abilities." You nod, both fists slamming together. The ground beneath your feet, already cracked, couldn't withstand it any longer, starting to show more cracks. Your two fists, which were slamming together, suddenly separated again. Standing in place, performing a set of fist techniques, wriggling your body, shouting loudly, exhaling a breath of air, creating a whirlwind blowing towards the girl. The girl raised an eyebrow, a little confused, and said suspiciously, "What do you mean? I don't like watching fist dances." You took a deep breath, the emerald green light in your eyes flashed to the extreme, the strong gangshi on your fists rippled. Taking a step to the side, you threw a left hook. "Sorry for the roughhousing," you said, as the ground began to crack violently at this moment. Your figure was elongated due to the terrifying speed, even leaving an afterimage in place. Your figure engulfed the girl, throwing a left fist, then swinging a right fist. The girl's expression didn't change. She didn't even bother to give a mocking smile. She had seen through all your movements. They were just parlor tricks, not comparable to her divine abilities and techniques. After all, no matter what, you were just a simple Jindan. While she was a Jindan whose realm was suppressed from Bushan realm, there was naturally no comparison between the two. Thinking like this, she stretched out her finger, forming a tiny formation on it, preparing to block this attack. This strike was very simple, without any frills, and even made people uninterested in defending, because it seemed that it could be dodged with a simple dodge. But out of courtesy and to let you see the difference in strength between the two sides, the girl chose to take the blow head on. 3 breaths later, she would understand that she should not have taken it. Of course, this is definitely something that happens later. The tiny formation used for defense on her fingertip shattered first, with basically no defensive effect at all. The girl retracted her finger, a little surprised in her eyes, feeling that this kind of power should not exist at the Jindan level. Could it be that the formation was too weak? The girl was still a little incredulous. But very quickly, the fist fell on her body's protective time formation. It could hit her in the future, and it could hit her in the past, but it just couldn't hit her in the present. The slightly surprised expression on the girl's face quickly returned to calmness. Because she knew you couldn't hurt her in the present. No matter what, she would always stand in an invincible position. Your fist fell on her protective formation. The emerald green eyes suddenly darkened, turning into a translucent color that spread out. The entire fist passed through the formation without any stagnation. The great formation began to spin wildly, dragged by your power of time, stopping at a precise temporal node. It was the present moment. The girl looked at the fist that was rapidly zooming in before her eyes. Her eyes suddenly widened. The fist landed. The girl's figure was knocked backwards hundreds of steps, plowing through the ground, creating deep grooves. Her legs braced. Her face bore a huge fist mark. But instead of getting mad, she just stared at Chen Xiao in shock. T-Sex, you're way too OP. Why doesn't your Jin Dan feel like a Jin Dan? It's more like Yuan Ying. If you weren't some no-name from this backwater, every major sect would be fighting to recruit you. Even I'm tempted. Chen Xiao cupped his fists, nodding modestly. The woman paused, touching her nose. So, you don't want to fight anymore? You can't beat me? Chen Xiao's answer was blunt, but instead of getting angry, the woman admired him even more. She chuckled. If I suppress my realm to Jin Dan, I might not be able to beat you. After all, you're not a normal Jin Dan. But even if I raised my cultivation to Yuan Ying in this tiny world, Yuan Ying wouldn't work either. Chen Xiao replied confidently, staring intently at the woman, not backing down. The woman was a bit surprised. So confident, huh? I've seen that you have a lot of divine abilities and techniques you haven't even used yet. Chen Xiao exhaled, not replying. Just taking a step forward, the sky within 100 li suddenly darkened. Thick black clouds rolled in and crimson lightning continuously roared around him, with lightning as large as mountain ranges appearing within the black clouds. The woman stared blankly, exclaiming, You could undergo a lightning tribulation at any moment. Enter Yuan Ying, Chen Xia nodded. Just with a thought, he retracted his step. The sky returned to its clear state, the lightning disappeared, and the light breeze and floating clouds showed he had withdrawn his intent to break through to the Yuan Ying realm. The woman crossed her arms, smiling. You really keep surprising me. I never expected someone like you to appear in such a tiny world. Even if your limit is only Butian realm, you'd definitely be among the strongest in the Butian realm. When the time comes, my ninth mountain would be have you hang around with a guest elder title. All right. Chen Jia nodded, not refusing. Being a guest elder is a sweet gig. You don't have to work and you get paid. But the current issue is about Huang Qingyue. If this woman from Ninth Mountain doesn't show enough sincerity, Chen Xiao, the girl knew that Chen Jia always had worries. But now she thought highly of Chen Xia's talent, so naturally she was willing to patiently explain, If you don't believe me, I can leave you a light that connects the two realms. At that time, you can talk to this little girl through this light, and after ascending to the immortal realm, you can also come to Ninth Mountain to find her. As long as you don't stay for too long, it's fine. All right, Chen Xia thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Actually, Huang Qingyu having to go to the immortal realm was a certainty. Even if she didn't go with this girl to the so-called Ninth Mountain, she would have to ascend on her own later. And Chen Xia had always been suppressing his realm, precisely because he wanted to ascend together with Huang Qingyu. But just like this girl said, there was one thing that Chen Xia couldn't help but worry about, which was that the spiritual energy and opportunities of this small world very likely wouldn't support the two of them ascending one after another. Neither of them staying was right. Now, the appearance of this girl had instead solved this dilemma. The girl looked at Chen Xia, who was deep in thought, raised her hand and tapped the frozen time in front of her, smiling. It's still better to let the person involved decide for themselves. Adding, by the way, I am the sect leader of Shenying sect on Ninth Mountain, and also one of the candidates for the next sect leader of Ninth Mountain. Afterward, the frozen time began to restore its normal flow. The shattered ground followed the restoration of time, returning to its original state. Huang Qingyu's dazed expression also returned. Her big round eyes blinked, looking at the two of them with a bit of confusion. The girl once again repeated her previous words to Huang Qingyu. Chen Xia told Huang Qingyu to think carefully and not to make things difficult for herself. Huang Qingyu frowned, pondered for a long time, and carefully asked, If I go to the immortal realm, can I still contact Chenjie, right? The girl nodded. As long as there is a light connecting the two realms, the two of you can contact each other. And after he ascends later, he can also come to Ninth Mountain to visit you, but he can't stay for long. All right, Huang Qingyu nodded firmly. I agree. Chen Xia stood on the spot. A gust of wind blew across his back. Another separation, but fortunately it was just a separation, not a separation of life and death. These things were unavoidable in a long life. On the day of farewell, Chen Xia wore a green shirt, his arms crossed in front of his chest, looked at Huang Qingyu with a smile and said, Goodbye. Huang Qingyu's eyes were red and swollen from crying, constantly sniffling, unable to stop no matter what she did. And she's already at the Jindan stage? She really can't keep it together, huh? She just looked at Chen Xia and sobbed, unable to say a single word. Chen Xia looked at this girl with heartache, a blue light flickering in his eyes, clearing the sky. He knows Huang Qingyu vast, clear skies with white clouds. What a simp. Wait for me. Chen Xia shouted again. Bro's making promises he might not be able to keep. Huang Qingyu wiped away her tears with her sleeve, nodding vigorously. Best girl is loyal. After this day, Chen Xia entered a long period of seclusion, no longer caring about worldly affairs. Talk about dropping off the map. The Zhonghu of Dasong no longer saw the emergence of top experts. The golden age is over. Some say this is the decline of the heavenly Tao, the decline of martial arts. Only the mortal path can open a new road. So martial arts is trash now? But everyone knows that currently, there is only the national teacher who can successfully cultivate the immortal path. Moreover, the national teacher has been in seclusion for a long time, ignoring worldly affairs, his whereabouts unknown. Where did this old man go? Some say the national teacher is living in seclusion in the secret chamber of the Dasong Imperial City. Some say the national teacher has long left the world. Others say the national teacher is traveling overseas. All are speculations. But one thing is certain, the national teacher doesn't care anymore. The guy retired. It has been 50 years since he went into seclusion and has not appeared. But the people still respect Chen Xia. They offer sacrifices to his sculpted statues every month. This is Chen Xia's main source of Linglong Qi. Currently, his Linglong Qi has reached 751,000. He only needs 250 more to level up. Looks like it's almost time to break through. But the amount of Linglong Qi received each year is decreasing. Perhaps the closer he gets to success, the harder it is to obtain. The grind is real. Chen Xia stretched, currently in the deepest secret chamber of the Dasong dynasty. Looking at the light in front of him, he felt a little helpless. This lamp connecting the two realms actually needs to be recharged. Talk about high electric bills. Moreover, it needs to be filled with the Qi luck of heaven and earth. Where is there any surplus Qi luck in heaven and earth now? Resources are drying up. So recharging this lamp connecting the two realms takes 30 years each time. It's only 2 parts complete now. To fully charge it, it will definitely take at least another 100 years. That's a long wait. Fortunately, Chen Jia confirmed in the previous conversation that Huang Qingyou is very safe, so he doesn't need to worry. She even became a heaven-grade disciple with her own palace and good treatment. She is set. At that time, Huang Qingyou was about to undergo the Yuaning lightning tribulation. She must be a Yuaning expert by now, right? Is this the abundant cultivation resources of the immortal realm? OP resources. Chen Jia sighed. Actually, that girl could have brought Chen Jia to the immortal realm together, but Ninth Mountain cannot accept Chen Jia. This means that if Chen Jia goes to the immortal realm, he will still be alone. No harem for our boy. Even has to deal with ancient monsters who've cultivated for tens of millions of years would definitely make Huang Qingyu worried sick. So our boy Chen Xia is holding off for now, waiting for the spirit cage to level up and truly master the great Tao. The Xuan Soul Qi needs to write its first Tao chapter, boosting his power to 500 before ascending to the immortal realm. He's going up there solo dolo, so he's got to be extra careful, can never have too many trump cards. Though he could always ask King Yu to send him some heavenly treasures and rare herbs. And what about little Shower who ascended long ago? Bet she's a big shot in her own right now, huh? Chen Xia thinks about it, further cementing his freeloading plans. He's freeloading with skill, what can anyone say? You got the skills, then you go freeload. Chen Xia crosses his arms, nodding this is his special talent after all. Inside the secret chamber, time is meaningless. Chen Xia uses system points to estimate the years passing by. He calms his mind, already beginning to write the Tao chapter within his heart. This is an incredibly mentally taxing task. The Tao chapter must be written with absolute precision, not a single mistake allowed. Even writing the simplest stroke takes Chen Xia half a month of honing. After finishing just one stroke, Chen Xia is nearly mentally exhausted, sweating buckets, needing 8 months of rest. On top of that, Chen Xia is still refining his golden core, polishing it to its peak, making it as powerful and complete as possible, trying not to lose out to a nascent soul. This requires slow and steady progress. Haste makes waste. Gotta rely on time for accumulation. Luckily for Chen Xia, the one thing he doesn't lack is time. Calmly writing Tao chapters, diligently refining his golden core, Chen Xia aims to finish all this around year 400. He's got no time to worry about other stuff, but outside the situation is changing rapidly. The 9th Emperor of the Great Song inherits the throne, having heard stories since childhood from the previous emperor about the Great Song having immortal protection. So after ascending to the throne, he's basically doing whatever he wants. Any court official who doesn't agree with him, death penalty, head chopped off. This clown loathes hearing flattery. So the court officials compete to come up with the sweetest words, and those who speak the sweetest words are usually the most treacherous. In their respective prefectures and counties, they bully the common folk, arbitrarily increase taxes, and pocket the money. Moreover, the eloquent civil officials are beginning to band together to suppress the military officials. The imperial court's in shambles and the nation's on its last legs. Yo, this is the beginning of the Dasong Kingdom's total collapse. The 9th year, peasant uprisings erupted in the southern provinces, with 30,000 farmers teaming up to smash the government, seize prefectures, and the leader declaring himself king. This sent the current emperor into a total rage, dispatching 300,000 troops to suppress these provinces. Any farmer caught was insta-killed. Even merchants weren't spared the death penalty. Only the families of officials had a chance of survival. Excessively brutal suppression usually just leads to even stronger resistance. Many provinces within the Dasong borders started to rebel, with some officials even openly opposing Dasong's oppressive regime. The peasant rebels counterattacked, striking at the capital city. The hearts of the Dasong people have changed. How can the nation possibly survive now? In just half a year, the rebel militia had stormed the capital, wiped out the officials, and surrounded the imperial city. The ninth emperor of the current dynasty sat on his throne, his face full of disbelief, gnashing his teeth and roaring in anger. How could this be happening? How dare these commoners rebel? Our Dasong has immortals protecting all things.